What's up, everybody? So this is Umair Haq again, and in this video, you're going to be introduced to a good friend of mine. I can't wait for you to meet him, meet the team, meet the crew. But he's going to be going through a debt elimination strategy, a financial restructuring strategy that I personally use. A lot of the investors in our group and in our team have used this very strategy to wipe out their debt, pay off big loans, and then start truly building their wealth mathematically. Guys, people can lie to us, numbers don't lie. Take notes, write down questions. I can't wait to see you implement this strategy. See you soon.
There we go. So we are recording. Good deal. So again, I will have to use the average numbers per household. I don't know everyone's personal finances, and this is a very personalized strategy. So I don't want to know anyone's finances. Don't put it in the chat box. But I will be using general numbers, average incomes, average expenses, different things like that. And well, let's get rocking and rolling. So the average family in the United States, and by the way, if anyone needs me to repeat anything or go slower or just write neater on the whiteboard, just let me know in the chat box. I'm definitely looking for interaction within the chat box. So the average family in the United States, the average household brings in about $58,000 per year. And that's going up a little bit. It was about 56 a few years ago. It's 58 now, but I'm going to round it up even more, just a little bit, to $60,000 per year, because that breaks down cleanly into about $5,000 per month. And that is net dollars, after tax dollars. That's what's actually hitting people's bank accounts. So I want to make sure that everyone is comfortable typing into the chat box. I'm going to start the interaction right away. If you are on the line and you currently have a W-2 job, you're employed by some company or some other entrepreneur of some sort, type a Y or yes into the chat box if you currently have a W-2 job right now. And then if you do, let me know what type of bank account do you use to capture your paycheck. Most people are getting paid by direct deposit these days. So I see a few yeses coming in. Good deal. So when the money leaves your employer, headed your way, what's the most common type of bank account that people use to capture that paycheck? Checking, right? Adrian said it right there, checking. The most common type of bank account. Now, what is the real purpose of a checking account? Are we really using it to grow wealth? Not really. It's basically just a holding area for your money until it comes time to pay out all of your different monthly expenses, right? And then if you were raised like I was, you try your best. And I tried for many years, didn't always work out, but you try, if there's anything left over at the end of the month, to push the extra money to the second most common type of bank account, which is the savings account. Now, the savings account is interesting. Type into the chat box what were you taught about having a savings account? Why should you have one? Why should you bother? Most people are raised being taught that they should save money. Now, why? There's a few different reasons that people usually give for putting money into a savings account. Now, I can tell you that the average household in the US doesn't even have $500 to $1,000 in a savings account. So we're not doing a very good job at saving, whether it's our fault or outside forces acting upon us. We're not saving lots of money these days. So rainy day fund, that is definitely a reason for saving money. Emergencies, absolutely. So emergency fund or rainy day fund, basically we get the idea, meaning something that would pop up in your life unexpectedly that might cause you to dive into that savings account. So what can you think of in your everyday life that might cause you to dive into savings? You're just going to work or doing whatever you're doing in your everyday life. What emergencies could possibly pop up in your life that might cause you to dive into your emergency fund? There are a few very, very common ones that we talk about. Medical. So medical is actually the number 2 reason in the country for diving into savings. However, it's the number 1 cause of bankruptcy in this country. As we've seen over the last year to year and a half, almost 2 years now, things medically are usually unexpected. And when they pop up, and if they're in conjunction with other things going on, like we can't go to work, we can't leave the house, all that crazy stuff, those medical bills can really add up quickly and get into the 5 and even 6 figures for extended illnesses and things like that. So unexpected home damage, absolutely. Maybe something simple. A tree doesn't have to fall on your house, right? Maybe just the AC goes out and you need to pay for that. That's a big one. The number one cause for diving into, and there it is, Angela. The number one cause for diving into your emergency fund is actually vehicle related. It's needing a new car or car repairs. Now we're going to talk about how people are funding those vehicles in some length and whether that's the most efficient use of your money, right? And I will try not to say that any particular strategy is good or bad. I just may say it may not be the most efficient use of that money. And hopefully by the time I'm done, you'll agree with me, right? So needing a new car is the number one reason for diving into it. Whether your teenager crashes it into a tree or your car just finally gives out, you need to go get another one. We'll talk about that extensively. But getting back to the savings, does anyone on the line happen to know how much they're earning on their savings account at their bank, right? I don't want to know how much you have in the bank. Just what are the interest earnings at your bank? I can tell you at my bank, they pay out on a savings account 0.15% over a year's time. So I park my money for 12 months in the savings account and they're paying me 15% of 1% over that year. How many years is it going to take me to get rich waiting for that to grow into something substantial, right? It probably will never happen. I won't live that long to see that grow into anything. But even if we give my bank the benefit of the doubt and say that they're paying me 1% earnings, interest earnings on my savings account, what a lot of people don't realize is that they actually have to pay taxes on those gains and earnings. So the bank is really only paying you peanuts. And then you have to pay taxes on your peanuts. You're not going to get rich that way. You're not going to get wealthy. And then there's this silent killer of your dollar, which has really, really been in the news over the last few days, especially this morning. It was all over the news. Inflation is at a 30-year high right now. It's at 6.2% for the month of October. It was 5.3, 5.4 in September. It is climbing steadily, and it could possibly approach the 7, 8, 9, 10%, right? Right now it's over 6, which is crazy. But even conservatively, if inflation is 2%, let's say, and the bank is paying you 1% over a year's time, that means that when you take that money out 12 months from now, it'll actually be worth less than when you put it in. The buying power of each dollar is less than when you put it in the year before. Inflation is the silent killer of your money. Most people don't account for it. It's a big, big loss of your money. Now, on that note, that is another reason why having a job may not be the most efficient use of your time, right? I'm not saying anything wrong with having a job, right? I've been there. I've worked 2 and 3 jobs. However, there's only so many hours in a day. There's only so much energy I would have to give, right? At some point, inflation is going to eat up all your money. You won't be bringing in enough money and you will struggle, as many people are. So we have to start leveraging other things, other people's time, energy, maybe even credit, different things like that to start growing wealth. So keep that in mind. So that's a major reason why wealthy folks don't save the bulk of their money to at least grow their wealth. Here's probably the largest reason why wealthy folks don't save money. Oh, by the way, question for everyone in the room. I always enjoy seeing answers on this. How many of you in the room would like to be wealthy one day? Type a Y into the chat box if you'd like to be wealthy. If you're not already, some of you might be rich. I don't know, right? I don't know what's going on in your life. But if you would like to be wealthy, let me know in the chat box. Yeah, there's all the yeses, right? If you would have asked me this question 6 years ago, I'd have had both hands raised, jumping up and down. That's why I'm here, right? I was really searching for something for a lot of years until I found this group. But I was there to learn about how money worked, how real estate investing worked, right? And luckily, it's really changed everything for me, as I said earlier. But we all kind of say we want to be wealthy. However, we're actually sabotaging our own path to wealth. And the funny part about that is most of us are knowingly sabotaging our path to wealth. Let me ask you this. Do wealthy folks, and I've kind of hinted at it already, but do wealthy folks get wealthy by parking their money in savings accounts, pushing money towards savings accounts? Or do wealthy folks do something else to grow their money? What are wealthy folks doing to grow and control their money? What do they do? Somebody type into the chat box. I know somebody's going to get this, because in the 3 years that I've been giving this presentation live and online, there it is, investing, Angela. Nobody's ever gotten that question wrong in 3 years of doing weekly presentations. We all know that wealthy folks are investing their money in different ways to grow wealth. Yet we, the average person, are kind of dreaming in a far off place that we want to be rich one day, but we're not doing what wealthy folks do, because we're trying to get money into a savings account for whatever reason. And we know that that is not how wealth is actually built, right? So we're going to start changing that today. Here is maybe the biggest reason why wealthy folks don't save a huge chunk of their money. Let's just hypothetically say that we all bank at the same place, maybe at my bank, and that bank, between all of us, is holding $100,000 of our money. What do the banks do with that money? What do you guys think? Do they lend it out? Do they just put our money in a vault and stare at it all day? What do they do with that money that we put it? Loan it. Okay, so Angela, I can tell you, I'm going to spill the beans on myself. I'm 45 years old, right? Until I was about 38, 39, when I found this group, that's exactly what I thought the banks were doing with our money, loaning it out. What I found out in taking some of the different banking and credit and tax classes with this group is that it's actually illegal for the banks to loan out our money. So you're not completely wrong, because they do leverage our money to get very, very rich. However, they're not allowed to loan it out directly. But here's how it actually works. Legally, they can take whatever they have on the books, our 100K, and use it as collateral in borrowing from the Federal Reserve. So they're able to take our money, go to the Fed, say, hey, we have 100K on the books. We are allowed to borrow up to 10 times what they have on the books. So they're turning our 100K into $1 million from the Fed. And then when people come in for things like car loans, which are on average about 6% interest historically, this is the money that they are directly loaning out when we go in for things like car loans or mortgages or student loans or personal loans. But do you see how they just use our own money? They 10x our money and loan it right back to us at a much higher rate. Because if we didn't park that money in the bank, would they have anything to leverage and loan out? No, we are making the banks rich, and they love us for it. But what are they paying us in return? Nothing, almost nothing. Yeah, Adrian, it's crazy. It's crazy. So when I first saw this, I said, what's the bank's return on their investment here? And it's not really their investment, but we can call this their investment. They're paying us 1% or less usually, and they're charging 6%. So when I looked at that, I said, oh, that's easy math. I'm no dummy. 6 minus 1 is 5, right? 5% return on investment. That's actually not true, because they're keeping 5 times more than they're paying out. It's actually a 500% return on what they're paying out. So for every $1 we park in a savings account, the bank turns it into $500 for themselves. You see why the banks have the largest buildings in every downtown city in America? This is why. They know how money works, and they use it to their advantage. So we have to start learning how it works and do that for ourselves. By the way, return on investment is a phrase that I had never even really thought of until I learned how money worked. You should start thinking about not so much what things cost, but what is the return on your investment? What's your return on the money or collateral that you're putting out? Are you getting a great return? Then more money might be worth it, right? You have to weigh that, and you have to learn how to do that. So when I first saw these numbers, that really angered me. It opened up my eyes and really angered me. And if it didn't anger you, or at least surprise you, this might. Did you know that the bank can take this same 100K, our money, and borrow from the Fed, not just this one time? They can actually take the same collateral and go back a second time, third time, fourth time, fifth time, 6 times, 7 times with the same collateral. That means they turn our 100K not into 1 million, but actually $7 million and loan it back to us at these higher rates, which means their return on investment is not 500%. It's actually 3,500%. And for every $1 you park in that savings account, they turn it into $3,500 for themselves. Is there anyone on the line getting a 3,500% return on anything they're investing in? Or even the 500, anything? No, the banks are doing it all day long with our money. It was never their money. So wealthy folks understand that, and they know that although this seems great for the bank, not so much for the average consumer. So they'll do things like, again, invest in different things, create and control their own cash flow rather than entrusting the banks with it. Excuse me, I dropped my eraser. Let me grab it. So those are the major reasons why wealthy folks don't save money. So as we start talking about how to pay off debt faster and what's a more efficient use of your money, we have to get into the average American expenses per household. So we'll do that by starting with a mortgage, right? A home loan. Is there anyone in the house? In the house? Is there anyone online that has a mortgage right now? I can tell you that the average home loan is about $200,000. That may have gone up recently. I believe it might be approaching about 240 these days. So you have a mortgage, yeah, okay. So we'll just stick with the round numbers here. I want you guys to understand the concept. It's more important than the actual specific numbers. But $200,000 is about average for 30 years. This breaks down to about $1,200 per month. And that's just principal and interest, no taxes or insurance on that yet. At an average rate historically of also 6%. I know you can get lower rates these days right now, but on average historically, about 6%. So we'll come over here off of the monthly expenses and write $1,200 for the home mortgage payment. The next common expense are the lines of credit, the credit cards, right? So we'll write lines over here. This family is bringing in $5,000 a month net after tax dollars. So not too shabby. We can give them a decent credit line. Let's give them a $15,000 limit. And I want you guys to understand this is just a regular credit card. As a matter of fact, let's call this the Visa account. So you know this is nothing crazy. It's not like a home equity line of credit or anything, just a regular credit card. With a $15,000 limit and a balance that they currently owe of $12,000. That's what they owe on the card. Now, the last time I did this presentation live in a room, somebody said, well, $12,000, you nearly maxed out this family and we just started the presentation. That's not fair. Unfortunately, that's actually me being pretty generous, because you could go on almost any financial website right now and see that the average family carries about $16,000 in credit card debt. I'm only giving 12 here. So I'm being a little generous. But this 12 also breaks down to about $600 a month for the minimum payment at 21% interest on average. Now, 21% interest is also interesting, because some of you on the line may be thinking 21%, I want my cards to be lower than that. Well, there may be one or two of you who might be thinking 21%, I wish my cards are 21%. Mine are higher than that, right? And I don't say that to be judgmental, because I was that person. When I first started out with credit in my younger days, my first card was 28% interest. Super high. I knew it at the time, but that's all I could get. And, you know, like I said, I'm here to admit I struggled financially for many, many years of raising two beautiful girls, but I really struggled financially. So I took the card I could get, 28%. And I'm here to tell you that over the years, I might have been late or missed a payment or two for whatever reason. Maybe to make the car note or to make the mortgage or rent payment, whatever it was. I've missed some credit card payments. So that card today has risen. The interest rate has gone up to over 33% interest. Super high. And it pains me to even say that, but it's true. Now, question for all of you in the room. Why do I still have that card? Why haven't I cut up that card and thrown it away, closed the account, and because I have plenty of other cards today with a much lower interest rates. Why do I keep that card that's over 33% interest? Any ideas? History, right? History with it. It is my longest history. So when I started taking some of the credit classes offered by Renatus, which they offer one or two personal credit classes, and then even a business credit, business funding class. That's awesome. But what I learned was if I closed that account, it would actually damage my profile. It would hurt my profile because it's my longest history. So if I'm trying to get money of any sort, what better place for the bank to go to and to look than my longest history, right? So I do keep it open. However, being that it's such high interest, I definitely don't have to, max out that card every month or anything. I charge about 1 to 3%. I might put a few tanks of gas on it and I pay it off at the end of the month. So I'm not paying any interest on it. But if I would have parked that card in the nightstand and just not used it, the bank might close it for lack of use. They want to see usage. So there's a game you play, right? And you have to know the game in order to play it well, in order to win. So that's something that we'll be getting into as well. So let's come back over here off of the monthly expenses and write $600 for the Visa, meaning that's the credit cards. The next common expense are the vehicles, right? The cars. How many cars do you have in your household? Maybe with you, if there's any other loved ones in your house, how many cars do you have in your house? I've heard everything from 0 cars to 9 cars in one house. I don't know what that person will do with 9 cars in one house, but I've seen it. So the average is actually about 2 cars, right? About 2 cars. And the average household carries about $13,000 in automobile debt at any given time. That breaks down to about $600 a month for the payment on those, again, at about 6% interest historically. So I won't spend too much time on that. I'll just come over here off of the monthly expenses and write $600 for the cars. I will get into later how we're funding those vehicles and what might be a better way for you. The next expense is something we all understand, we all deal with. That's the everyday living expenses. This is you putting gas in the car, buying groceries, maybe childcare, whatever living expenses means to you, your everyday stuff. I'm going to put about $1,200 here, which seems a little bit low to me, but that's the average. Now, I can tell you right now that that is the only number that I will leave on this board for the entire presentation. The $1,200 of everyday living expenses. And I leave it there. I don't show you how to pay that off quickly because most people, 99.9% of America, does not know how to get rid of those expenses or how to get that money back. When you pay for your kids, instruments at school or sports equipment or prom or your, trips to the grocery store, things like that. Most people don't know how to write that stuff off and get that money back. Nobody pays them back. So I will leave that there. Now, what I learned in the 2 8-hour classes of tax and legal strategies was how to write off just about all that stuff. And almost my entire life became a full tax write-off, including my children, right? So once you start learning this stuff, it begins to snowball. You learn banking strategies and credit strategies, tax and legal, and combined, those things will make you wealthy. So I will leave that there again, because most people don't know how to write that stuff off. The final expense, and some people don't agree with this, but I'll explain it as we go. The final expense that I will put is actually the savings account. Because as I said earlier, if you are parking money in a savings account, it may not be the most efficient use of that money. And I hope you'll agree with me by the time I'm done. But I count that as an expense, and I'm going to put $1,400 there, which sounds like a lot because I said most people don't even have $500 in the savings account. But that $1,400 is a combination of both long-term and short-term savings. So long-term is the forced savings at your jobs, the retirement accounts, right? Your 401ks, your mutual funds, all that sort of stuff. Short-term is whatever you're stashing at the end of the month, $50, $100, $500, whatever it is. So This is the average scenario in the United States. $5,000 a month coming in, hitting the bank account. How much is going out the door by the end of the month? What is this output? Let's add it up. $1,200 for a mortgage, $600 for credit cards, so $1,800. Another $600 for vehicles, which brings you to $2,400. About $1,200 for everyday living expenses, just living your life. That puts you at $3,600. And then as a combination of long-term and short-term savings, $1,400. That means if you're adding along with me, the output is the same $5,000 that you have coming in. So basically every penny that's coming in is going back out the back door by the end of the month. Now, again, I admit, I've had people jump up and say to me, well, you just made those numbers add up to the same thing so that it looks bad on the whiteboard, maybe for dramatic effect, right? But these are, averages. But what are we really looking at here? What you are looking at is simply a scenario where a family is living paycheck to paycheck, right? As the money comes in, it's going out the back door. By the end of the month, we're broke. I've been there. And I can tell you, statistically, I actually just heard this as I was driving down the road the other day, one morning, about a week ago. Over 65% of America is now living paycheck to paycheck. And that number is going up. So 2/3 of America is already living like this, and it's getting worse. 2 out of 3 people is paycheck to paycheck. And for people over 65, that number is over 90%, which is really sad and scary, right? As we're trying to save for our retirement and things like that, if the people right now over 65, 90% of them are living paycheck to paycheck, something's broken. So what makes us think we're going to get there by doing the old-fashioned stuff? We need to change something, right? We need to change something. So I'll talk about that. So this family is living paycheck to paycheck, barely getting by, which means that at the end of the month, there is zero cash flow to invest, right? There's no money left over to invest in real estate or whatever you want to invest in. There's just no opportunity to do that. And guess what? This is exactly where the banks and the big corporations want you. You might even lump in the government with that as well. This is exactly where they want you to be, believe it or not. This is a strategy employed by the banks and big business. It's called segregation of income, where your paycheck is broken up into 20 different pieces, and you're never able to really get ahead on any of these bills. Sure, you're making enough to just make your minimum, maybe a little above minimum, but life happens, and we end up in, right here again with nothing left over at the end of the month. Yeah, Adrian, I'm totally with you. It is a sad situation, and it's true. So until we start uncovering the truth and face the facts of what's really happening, we cannot overcome it. So we're going to start doing that today. I'm going to show you how to start using the full power of your paycheck, pay off these bills super fast without changing your budget, without getting a second job or a side hustle or cutting back on groceries or anything else in your life, right? So the first step in the strategy is actually, we're going to start doing what wealthy people do, or rather don't do, which is save money. Stop saving money, right? Now, bear with me. That is not an absolute. I won't tell you to not save any money. You'll be able to figure out once you take the class, you need to figure out what reserves that you'll need in the future. But for the time being, for the sake of the strategy, I'm going to tell you to stop saving money. So if you stop sending that $1,400 to the 2 different types of savings, that means that money is now left over to do other things. Just as a practicality, you don't send it there, it's freed up, right? The next step is really where the strategy starts taking shape. I really need you guys to pay attention on this note. The old way of paying your bills was this. The money left your employer, it landed in your checking account, you paid all of your different bills, and then you hoped and prayed there was something left over that you could send to a savings account. And then you hoped and prayed that no emergency popped up where you'd have to pull money out of that savings account. And if an emergency did pop up, now you're hoping and praying that a second emergency doesn't pop up, right? Think about that. With most people living paycheck to paycheck, could they afford to have their car totally break down this week, and then next week the AC or the heat goes out in their house? Could most people afford that? Unfortunately, no. They can't. It's just a fact, right? They're probably going to wipe out their savings with the first emergency, and then it'll take them months or years to build up another reserve. Scary stuff, right? So the new way of using your money is this. The money will still leave your employer, still head your way, and it could still land in your old checking account. The difference is this. When the money hits your checking account, you will take every penny that you bring in, whether you get paid weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, doesn't really matter. The point is, whenever you get money, you're going to send all of it to your line of credit. All of it to your line of credit. All $5,000 that you bring in will now be hitting this credit card. I'll slow down right there because that confuses people, right? You might be thinking, okay, so $5,000 a month is going to this credit card. Obviously, the credit card gets paid off faster, but who's paying my mortgage, right? Who's paying my car notes and my everyday living expenses? They're still there. Who's paying that? Well, let's look at what happens when we start sending all of our income to that line of credit. If you did that starting this month, let's say November, you send all of your paychecks to this credit card, do you need to make a separate $600 payment for that card? Or is that payment covered when you send your paychecks over here? Is it a separate payment or covered? Let me know in the chat box. I need to know that you guys are following along with that idea right there, because that might be maybe the most complicated thing that I say. Is that $600 card payment covered? It's covered. You're right, Angela, it is covered, right? And now, because your paychecks are acting as a payment on that card, and that because you don't have to make a separate $600 payment, that money is now freed up. The difference is it's not sitting in your checking account, it's sitting within your line of credit. And this line of credit becomes your new checking account. You're going to use it the same way you used to use your debit card. You send your whole income to the line of credit, and whenever you need to put gas in the car, use the credit card. Childcare, use the credit card. What else did I say? Groceries, use the credit card, right? You guys get it. It's going to act as your new checking account. But what that does is it frees up that other $600 that you would have used to make that payment. So now you started out with zero cash flow, and now you have $2,000 a month left over at the end of every month, right? You basically gave yourself a 40% raise. That is 40% of your income that is now sitting in your account every single month. And you didn't have to work any side hustles. You didn't have to work overtime. You didn't have to sacrifice anywhere, cut back on groceries. You simply used your current budget in a different way, and you freed up 40% of your income. When is the last time you got a 40% raise at your job? I could probably add up every raise I ever got, and I don't think it added up to 40%, right? So that's pretty cool, although it's actually going to get way better than that, but it's a pretty good start. Didn't have to get a second job. And you know that side hustle, the gig economy is big right now. People are doing all kinds of things to earn extra money, especially now that a lot of people are, realize that they could do things from home and trying to do different things. And actually, Renatus provides another income opportunity as well, but that's a totally different training for a different day. But you freed up 40% of your income. That is a big, big deal. Now I'm going to park that right there, and I'm going to get back to talking about needing that car in an emergency that we talked about earlier, right? Needing a new car. So for all of us, we all pretend that our car broke down. You can't fix it. It's just done, right? You need a new car. If I was going to play the dealership at this point, or the bank for the dealership, and you were coming to me for a new vehicle, the first thing I would probably do is run your credit, right? And if it looked pretty decent, I might say, sure, we're willing to fund this vehicle, and I'm actually in a pretty good mood today, so I'm going to let you choose the interest rate on this new car. So if I gave you all the opportunity to choose between 6% interest or 21% interest, what would you choose? What would be the obvious answer that you would choose? It's almost a dumb question for me to ask. Would you rather pay 6% or 21% interest? Let me know in the chat box as I take a sip of water here. 6%, right? What's the obvious reason that we'd all choose 6% interest instead of 21? Another dumb question for me to ask. Why choose 6%? Actually, it's lower, right? So lower interest rate therefore means less payments over time. Hold that thought, because to prove my next point, I'm actually going to use a visual aid, which is actually the bottle of water I just took a sip out of. Regular bottle of water, right? What temperature would it have to be in the room that I'm standing in for this water to freeze into a block of ice? Meaning, what's the freezing point of water, right? At what temperature does rain turn into snow? Put it that way. I know we have to go back to like 5th grade science class. Some of us like me have to go a little further back than others. 32 degrees, right? So 32 degrees. So that's half, right? There's something missing there. 32 degrees, what? And the what is actually very, very important. 32 degrees Fahrenheit, right? That's the freezing point of water. And that equals 0 degrees Celsius. So that's the freezing point with Celsius. So now that we see that in black and white, hopefully you'd all agree that that's a true statement. Those two temperatures are equal. That being the case, if those two are equal, what happens if I take the 0 and I turn it into 1 degree Celsius? Now, which of these two temperatures is higher or hotter? 32 degrees Fahrenheit or 1 degree Celsius? Which is the higher temperature? What do you guys think? Let me know in the chat box. What's the higher temperature? 32 or 1? I gotta open up my markers, otherwise I'll be doing it later. Any guesses? Nobody wants to guess? What's higher? 1, right? The 1 is a higher temperature because 0 was freezing, so we raised it by 1 degree. However, that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense because 1 is a much lower number than 32. How could it be a higher temperature? What makes that true? Well, it's because, well, duh, that one's Fahrenheit and that one is Celsius, right? They're different scale of measurement. And the reason that I show you that visual aid is that I want you to understand, when you go down to the bank for funding for anything, car loans, mortgages, student loans, personal loans, anything, the banks, they see us coming, right? And they know that the average American doesn't know very much about how money works. And the average American will jump on the interest rate with the lower number, meaning that 6% interest, because it's a lower number, but they don't think about the scale of measurement. So what if I told you that the 6% interest was on a loan, but the 21% interest was on a line of credit? By the time I'm done, you will be begging for 21% interest because 21% on a line of credit is way cheaper than 6% on a loan. So the scale of measurement becomes so vital, so crucial. And again, the average person just doesn't think about that. You'll be begging for 21% by the time I'm done, right? It'll be ridiculous how much cheaper it is. So let me show you exactly how expensive this 6% is on the loan. And I will do that by graphing out a mortgage, right? And I know somebody said they had a mortgage. Maybe this will look familiar to you. On the bottom will be my 30-year timeline, right? My 30-year loan. So we're starting in 2021, 30 years out, it's 2051. Hopefully you can all see this. If not, let me know, I can draw it bigger. The halfway point of the loan, 15 years in, is 2036. 17-year mark, 2038. And the 4-year mark, 2025. On the left side will be my actual monthly mortgage payment. So the $1,200 that I'm sending to the bank every month, that I'm busting my backside for, maybe working 2 and 3 jobs and not really watching my kids grow up, and totally been there, right? Missing dance recitals and t-ball games and all that stuff to make that payment. But beneath that $1,200, I will write $950. And then down at the bottom, I will write $250. So think about this. Out of my $1,200 payment, what does the $950 represent? What do you guys think? And I'm pretty sure you guys all know the answer to this. $950 out of my $1,200 is going where? About 3/4 of my payment is going to what? And I know you've all seen charts like this, right? That is the interest on the payment. That is the interest, which means only about $250 is going towards principal pay down. Another way of saying that is every time I send the bank $1,200 of my hard-earned money, I'm only getting about $250 worth of house, right? The rest of it was pure profit to the bank as interest costs. And you've seen charts like this before. The interest starts out really high and it kind of dies off over the life of the loan. And the principal does the opposite. It starts out low, but it climbs later on. And by the time you hit your last payment, payment number 360, that last payment is mostly principal. But I want you guys to take note of where the lines intersect. And I know my artwork isn't perfect, but at this point here, that's your break-even point. At that mark, you would have 600 going towards principal and 600 towards interest. But do you notice that you're way past the halfway point of the loan? You're at year at least 16 or 17 at least before you ever break even on the interest. Before that, you're paying way more interest than you're getting in principal pay down, right? So where does the bank want you to stay? They want you to stay in the front of that loan where they're getting the most money. And by the way, did you know that on the average mortgage, the bank gets most of their profit in the first 8 years? That blew me away. I had no idea about that. The bank gets most of their money in the first 8 years. Not all of it, but most of it. So think about this. For those of you with a mortgage, how do most people try to pay off their mortgages faster? What are they doing? They're sending extra money in, right? Maybe an extra $50 a month, or making a 13th payment every year, paying biweekly. There's different ways of doing it, right? But what we're really doing is sacrificing in some other area of our life in order to try to pay down our loan faster. And all we really did was shave off, if you're lucky, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, maybe. But you're still above the 20-year mark. If you're super aggressive, you might get it down all the way to 15 years. But did you beat the bank? No, you didn't. The bank took most of the money in the first 8 years. They might have sold off your mortgage after that, right? They got their money and they're gone. So you didn't beat the bank. All you did was sacrifice and suffer in some other area of your life. So I'm going to show you a better way to pay down this mortgage faster and beat the bank at their own game. And let me show you, actually, you see where you had the break-even point here? Not even very many people even get to that point, let alone to the 30-year mark. Of all Americans with a mortgage, what percentage of them do you think get to the 30-year mark and pay off their mortgage in full? I can't remember who said they have a mortgage right now. Was it Angela? What percentage of Americans are getting to that point and paying off their house in full? Think it's 5%, 25%, 30%? Let me know in the chat box. How many Americans are paying off their mortgage? Adrian, okay. So, Adrian, I don't know how long you've been paying your mortgage, but are you approaching the 30-year mark? 2%, Lamont says, 2%. Any other guesses? I'm always curious to see what people are thinking. I've seen everything from, 1% to somebody said 50, 60%. Only 5 years in. Okay. So right now, the bulk of your payments are mostly interest, right? That's just a fact of the average mortgage. The answer to this question is actually less than 1%. Less than 1% of America is actually paying off their 30-year mortgage. And there was actually a time when it was pretty common for people to pay off their mortgages, right? Think about the baby boomer generation after World War II. So Lamont has got a home loan as well. After World War II, you had in the 40s, 50s, 60s, into the early 70s, it wasn't uncommon for you to only have one person in the household, that needed to work. That's all you needed in those days. It was nice, right? And people were paying off mortgages. Is that the case today? No. usually have more than one person in the house working. They probably all have side hustles. So there's 3 and 4, maybe even 5 incomes being thrown at these mortgages. Yet less than 1% of America is paying off their mortgages after 30 years. It doesn't happen. And this is a major reason why it doesn't happen. If you've been paying your mortgage on time, at about the 4-year mark, something happens. And Adrian, you're 5 years in, you might be able to attest to this. Let me know if this happened to you. At about the 4-year mark, the bank looks at your profile and says, hey, Mr. Mrs. Customer Client, we see that you've been in your home for 4 years. You've never been late. You never missed a payment. And we know you're working hard to make that. Maybe you're not watching your kids grow up or spending time with family or taking vacations, but we appreciate you making that mortgage payment. So as a gift to you, here's what we'll do for you. Allow us, the bank, to pay off your credit card bills. It's on us. Don't worry about it. That's small potatoes to the bank. They'll pay that off. Absolutely, right? And you know that old clunker car you have out in the driveway? Allow us to pay that off. Yeah, that $13K, we'll wipe it out. Don't worry about it. And here's the icing on the cake. That $1,200 mortgage payment, let's drop that down. Let's drop it down to, I don't know, $1,100 a month, saving you a whopping $100 a month for the next 30 years. Doesn't that sound great? And that's where they get us, really. That's really where they get us. Because we might not know how much we're saving, but that sounds like a lot of money. And most Americans are almost brainwashed into thinking in 30-day cycles. And they make financial decisions based on the monthly expenses, right? What they can fit into their monthly budget, right? So you know what industry really understands that and takes advantage of it big time? The auto industry, right? You go down to the car dealership. When you agree on a price, you go back to the finance department. What is the first question they ask you? Is it how much would you like to pay in total? Or is it how much would you like to pay per month? Per month, right? That's how they get us. And whatever you answer, they've got you now, because they will lower that monthly payment to whatever you need it to be, even if it means extending that 5-year note 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, 9 years. I actually had someone on the line a few months ago who said, I currently work at a car dealership. We write 9-year car loans every day of the week. And that blew me away, because I don't think these cars are staying on the road 9 years. But guess what? That bill is coming due for 9 years. Why do people sign for things like that? Because that's what it takes to fit it into their monthly budget, right? Pretty sad state. But what is the bank really offering here when they offer to pay off the credit cards and the cars, drop the monthly payment? They want you to refi that house, right? They want you to refinance. But when you refinance, which again, on average happens at about year 4, when you refinance, what you're doing is you're starting the loan all over again. And every payment you made up until that 4-year refinance is now a pure gift to the bank, because none of that previous money will go towards the new mortgage. You just extended your 30-year mortgage into 34, 35, 36 years. You just extended it. And once you refi, every dollar you send to the bank buys you less and less house. Think about that. The amount of principal pay down you get after refi actually goes down. What about this one? Let's say that you refied at year 4, and now it's 4 years since your previous refi. So you've actually been living in the house 8 years. You're over here. You think in the subsequent 4 years, after the house paid off your credit cards 4 years ago, that you might have run up your credit cards again? I think if you give me 4 years, I could run up some credit card debt, right? No problem there. So we most likely would have run up our credit cards again. And do you think in that next 4-year span, after the bank paid off my old clunker car, that at some point I got tempted to go get another car? Probably. The average household gets a new car every 5 years in this country. So if the bank comes back at year 8 and says, hey, we know how much you enjoyed the refinance 4 years ago. We know you're still out there working hard to make your payments. You deserve another break. Why don't you refinance again? Pull the equity out of your house again. Pay off the credit cards again. Pay off that new car you have in the driveway. and we'll drop your monthly payment again from $1,100 to $1,000 a month. Most people that refinance one time will end up doing it 2 and 3 times in their lifetime. I know people that have done it 3 and 4 times because they get into a cycle of debt that they cannot get out of. And they see the only option as refinancing again. That's the only way they can make their bills. And it's a pretty sad state because again, after you refi, every dollar is buying you less house. And that's why less than 1% of America ever pays off their house in full. It doesn't happen. Refinancing doesn't seem like a good thing, right? Now, when I'm nearing the end of the presentation, I'll show you when it might be a good time to pull equity out of your house, but it won't be to pay off your bills here, right? I'm going to show you how to do that without changing your budget, without doing anything crazy like that. And when we do refi, I'm not going to go to Vegas with it. I'm not going to build a pool in my house or put a deck on the backyard. I'm going to do something that's going to create cash flow, right? So let me show you how expensive this mortgage is, even before the first refinance, the original mortgage, right? Again, most refis start at about year 4. So we'll do kind of a 4-year index or 48 months, let's call it. 48 months times my $1,200 payment. How much money did I send to the bank in that first 4-year time span? Well, you guys can follow along with me and do the math. I've been doing this every week for about 3 years, so I know it by heart. I have sent the bank $57,600 of my hard-earned money just in the first 4 years. Is that a lot of money to send to the bank? You better believe it. That's almost the average annual income, right, in America. That might be 2 years' salary for a lot of people. And even if you're lucky enough to earn more than that, it's still a hefty lump of your income going towards that house, towards that mortgage. But how much house did you actually get for it? How much principal pay down? Well, you can take the same 48 months, multiply it times the $250 per payment, and see that you only got $12,000 of principal pay down in the same 4-year span. That means that in that first 4 years, the bank took $45,600 in pure profit. Now you sent them almost 58 grand, but they took 45.6 in pure profit. You only got 12,000 in principal pay down here. You see why the banks love these mortgages, right? That's just the first 4 years. So that being the case, do you see why the banks want you to refinance after year 4 or year 8? Because they want to keep you in their maximum profit range. They want you to always be in the beginning of your loan, right? And if you start passing that point, they want you to get another loan and start it all over again. Because again, as you refi, these numbers actually get worse. They get worse, right? Pretty sad state. Now, in looking at these numbers, does anyone think that looks like a 6% loan to them? Even if you don't know what the real interest rate is, somehow that doesn't look like 6% interest, right? So who allowed the bank to call it 6% interest? And think about this, and I'll show you what the true interest rate is in a little bit, but this is really what happens. Who regulates the banks? Let's just generally say government, right? Whether it's the Fed or government. So the government comes to the banks and says, hey, we will allow you to call it 6% interest, fooling the average American. But if they knew what the real interest rate was, nobody would ever sign on the dotted line, right? So the government says, we'll allow you to call it 6%, fooling the American public. But in order that none of us go to jail, no one gets in trouble, whenever you say 6%, you have to use the magic word, right? And that magic word is amortized, right? So it is not 6% loan. It is 6% amortized over 30 years. What that means is because there's a set time frame on the loan, the bank can calculate how much interest you would have paid over 30 years, and then they can front end load most of that interest. And again, they're getting most of their profit in the first 8 years, right? The banks know what they're doing. They're not going to wait 30 years for you to make all your payments. Anything could happen. They want all their money up front. And we're signing on the dotted line for these things because, to be honest, most of us don't know what the word amortize even means, right? I don't think I could give you a textbook definition. I mean, I learned through Renata's, but most average American has no idea what it means. So let's look at it. The root word of amortize is the M-O-R-T, mort, and that pertains to death, right? In Old Latin, mortuary, mortician, that sort of thing, death. The A means not or the opposite of. So what that word is telling you is that this loan will never die. The loan will never die. Now, that's not the textbook definition either, but that's how I want you to remember it. Because with less than 1% of America paying off their mortgages, the loan isn't dying. We are passing away still in mortgage debt. We're dying before the mortgage does, right? Pretty sad state with 99% of people with a mortgage never paying it off. So let's look at what the interest rate really is, and then we'll start getting over into how much cheaper the lines of credit actually are. Here's a little trick. You guys can write this down. It's a gift for me. I learned this in the education. If you want a general idea of what the interest rate on an amortized loan is, it's not exactly perfect, but it'll give you a good, rough off the top of your head estimate. Take the interest rate, double it, and then add a 0 on the end. So on a 6% interest, if you doubled it, it becomes 12. Add a 0 on the end, it becomes 120. This loan is about 120% interest. You believe that? Would you sign on the dotted line? Would you sign on the dotted line if you had 100? Adrian, would you have signed if they said your interest rate was 120% interest? No way. Like, no way, right? But that's what it really is, right? But they're calling it 6% amortized. And I can prove to you pretty simply that it's over 100% interest. Think about this loan. After 30 years, if you never refied or anything, you're just paying the original mortgage. After 30 years, are you going to pay $200,000 plus 6%? No, that would make it about $212,000. By the time this 30 years was up, you would have paid about $432,000, right? 100% means double. So you would have a $200,000 house. The bank would have taken $232 in pure profit. This is over 100% interest, about 120%, give or take. So remember, double it and then add a 0 on the end. And that's give or take about what the true interest rate is on that. So let's talk about how much cheaper the lines are. We're going to transition from loans to lines. As I do that, let's talk about some of the differences. When I make a loan payment, whether it's my mortgage or my car note, whatever it is, I make a payment on this loan and that check clears at the bank. Can I then use my mortgage to go to the movies or go to a restaurant that night? No. That loan payment goes one direction, away from me, and it is never coming back. However, on my line of credit, my Visa credit card, whatever it is, I make a payment against my credit card. Once that clears at the bank, can I not use that credit card at the movie theater that same night or a restaurant or whatever I want? Order something off Amazon, right? Sure, because on a credit card, the money goes both ways. On a credit card, it's actually revolving debt. And it is simple interest, not amortized interest, which is a huge benefit for you. Really big benefit. What about this one? Let's say that I never refinanced on this house. I've been paying the original mortgage for 30 years. I'm down to my final payment. I made 29 years and 11 months worth of payment, my last one. Is my final payment, payment number 360, is it any less than my first payment was 30 years ago? No. This loan has been $1,200 a month every month for 30 years. That is because on a loan, your payment is based on the original debt, the original 200K. However, on my credit card, as I pay down that balance, doesn't my minimum payment go down as well? Yeah, sure it does. Sure it does. because on the line of credit, your payment is based on your current balance, not on the original debt. That's a huge benefit to you. That's a lot of flexibility there, right? Huge flexibility. Finally, what about this one? Let's look at this car loan. If I miss 2 or 3 payments on my car loan, what am I worried about? What sound might wake me up at 3:30 in the morning and make me jump out of bed and look out the window? And I say that because I've had that experience, right? The repo man. And I'm here to tell you, I'm nothing special. There was one time I remember I jumped out of bed at 3:30 in the morning because I thought I heard the backup beep of a tow truck in my driveway. And I knew I was late on a couple of car payments. I was struggling. I don't consider myself a bad person. I was just struggling, right? Now, luckily it wasn't a tow truck, but then you kind of start hiding your car in the neighbor's garage or your brother's house. Times are hard. I've totally been there. But you're right. If you miss 2 or 3 payments on this car loan, they're going to repo that car. And the same is going to happen for your mortgage. You miss 2 or 3 payments, they're going to start the foreclosure process. And at some point, there'll be a sheriff standing at your door telling you you can only take what you can carry with you, or your stuff is out on the front lawn. I don't know, but it's an ugly process. However, think about this. If I moved all of this automobile debt, all the money that I owe in this car, this 13K, and I moved it over to the credit card. So now I owe it to the card, not here. And I missed 2 or 3 credit card payments. Is anyone coming to repossess that car? Yes or no? What do you think? I moved all the debt over to the card and I missed some credit card payments. Anyone coming for that vehicle anymore? No, they're not, right? Because as far as that bank is concerned, that car is now paid off, right? Oh, Lamont's giving all his details. Lamont, I didn't ask you for your details, but I get it. I get it. Yeah. I mean, so as you take the class, you'll be able to plug in your numbers. And actually, I usually don't say this to the end, but there's actually a Velocity Banking app that Renata's created. So you can plug in your own numbers and figure out how fast you could pay off your own debts, right? It doesn't save any of your personal numbers or anything, but it's a pretty cool tool to check out how it would work for you, right? But you need to take the class to figure out how Velocity Banking actually works. But what was I saying? Oh yeah, so the debt is now on the credit card. Nobody's coming for the car, so there's some level of asset protection here. Not the greatest, right? You have to take the tax and legal classes to learn how to truly protect your assets and so they don't get all messed up, right? If something goes crazy, but some level of asset protection. But the debt is over here. Now, if you miss 2 or 3 credit card payments, oh, Lamont sent me a sorry, Lamont. I see now there was a direct message, but I won't spill your beans on your numbers. So you missed 2 or 3 credit card payments, they're going to jack up the interest rate. You're definitely going to get some late fees. But remember what I said about the interest rates, that this 6% is truly about 120%. So even if they hiked up this interest rate, it's still going to be way cheaper than this. Remember my card that was 28% and now it's 33%? Still cheaper than 120. So it's still way cheaper than a 6% amortized loan. So, right, you have to balance, you have to weigh it, right? Is it worth it to you? This may go up a little bit, you pay some late fees, but it happens, right? Let me show you how much cheaper this is. Let's compare apples to apples. I'm going to graph out this line of credit and we can compare it to what we're paying on these amortized loans. So here's my graph. On the bottom, I'll have my timeline. We'll start now in November, December, January, February, March. Let's go one more month to April. And then over here is my line of credit. We said I'm starting with a $15,000 limit and a current balance that we owe on this card of $12,000. That's what we owe. So I said in the beginning that you will be sending all $5,000 of your income over to the line of credit. As you start that, let's say in the month of November right now, you will, let me get green here. Your balance will drop, right? You start with a $12,000 balance, you pay $5,000 in, that means your balance will drop from 12 to to 7K, right? It drops by 5,000. But you wouldn't be done in November because I also said that you're using this credit card to live your everyday life. Go to the grocery store, put gas in the car, all that stuff. So what are your current expenses? You started out with $5,000 of expenses in the beginning, but we eliminated the savings. We eliminated the need for a separate credit card payment. So you recoup $2,000. That means your output is no longer 5K. Your output is now only $3,000. There's 3K going out the door, 2,000 sitting in the account every month. So what happens here is you put your 5,000, it drops to 7K. You live your life, and by the end of November, it's gone back up by $3,000. And your balance at the end of the month is 10K. And then the next month in November, you just do the same thing. It's pretty simple. You put your 5,000 in, you live your life, 3,000 comes back out. At the end of December, your balance is 8K. Do you see what's happening here? So you just keep doing that. 5,000 in, 3,000 out, 6K. I'm going to stick to one color here. It's faster. 5,000 in, 3,000 out, 4K. 5,000 in, 3,000 out, 2K. In month number 6, you put your 5,000 in, really nothing comes out because you just paid off the balance. So you're at 0K or okay, which is okay with me because I just paid off a $12,000 credit card balance in just 6 months' time. Does anyone need me to repeat what just happened? And in the meantime, think about this. The average way that we pay our credit cards as just one of 20 other payments that we have in our lives, how long would it take you to pay off a $12,000 balance? Well, if you opened up your credit card statements every month, you would see, and by law, they have to tell you, if you make minimum payments, it will take you this long to pay off your credit card, right? With about a $12,000 balance, you're looking at about 25 to 27 years at just making minimum payments. Crazy. I just showed you how to do it in just 6 months' time. Does everyone get that? It's very important that you understand what just happened, right? We have our 5,000 coming in, only 3,000 going out. So we're gaining $2,000 against that balance every single month, right? So notice that I paid off 12 grand in 6 months, and that is the same amount that I paid off on the mortgage. Only how long did it take me to get $12,000 of pay down on the amortized loan? It took me 48 months, 4 years. So on that side, it took you 4 years. On this side, with the same amount, I paid it off in just 6 months. I just saved you 3.5 years. And how expensive was it? Over there, you're paying almost 46 grand in interest. How much are we paying on this side? Let's figure it out. To figure out how much interest you're paying over the 6 month span, you need to take your balance, which is the $12,000, and multiply it by the interest rate, right? We have a 21% APR, annual percentage rate. So 12,000 times 21%, or 0.21, it's the same thing, equals $2,520 in interest. So here's a question for everyone in the room. To pay off 12 grand, would you rather do it in 6 months and pay 2,500 in interest cost? Or would you rather have it take you 4 years and you pay almost $46,000 in interest costs? Right? It's almost a no-brainer, right? 6 months, absolutely no-brainer. When you understand how this works, it really is a no-brainer here. But guess what? That $2,500 is not correct. It's actually not, because that $2,500 was based on a 21% APR, annual percentage rate, annual. Did it take me a full year to pay off this debt, or did I do it in half a year? I did it in 6 months' time, right? So you have to divide that number in half. So the actual interest is about $1,260. It actually went down. So again, I'll ask, 6 months, $1,200, or 4 years and almost $46,000. No brainer. I told you you'll be begging for 21% by the time I'm done. Guess what else? That $1,200 isn't correct either, because that $1,200 is based on a $12,000 balance. Was my balance $12,000 for the whole 6 months time? No. The balance dropped by $2,000 every single month. So you have to play out the numbers month by month. Luckily for you, I've done it because it took me a long time to figure it out, to be honest. And what I came up with was, if I remember, about 782. Let's just call it 780. Less than $1,000 in interest to pay off $12,000, and you're doing it super fast. So again, 6 months, less than $1,000, or 4 years and $46,000. Are you okay with just giving away $46,000 to the bank? Are you that rich already that you can just throw that money away? Or would you like to learn a new way and pay way less? Now, we're still paying interest. Interest didn't just disappear, but using this strategy, you're paying way less. You are way more efficient. Like I said, it's a way more efficient use of your money. This is allowing you to use the full power of your paycheck, unlike the old segregation of income that was breaking up your paycheck into all these pieces. Here, you're throwing the whole paycheck at it and paying this down super fast. Now, if I pay off my credit card debt that quickly, are there some things that might go up or improve as far as my credit is concerned? What might go up if I started paying off my bills that fast? What do you think? Let me know in the chat box. What might go up? I need a sip of water. Any ideas? Access to more money, right? So let's call that the limit, right? The limits went up. So the limits would almost certainly go up over time. Now, how much it goes up is depending kind of on your personal history, right? If you already have A1 credit, maybe it went up a lot. Maybe your limit went up from 15 to 30,000, 50,000, who knows, right? If it's so, maybe it goes up to 20, 25, who knows? But it's almost certainly going to go up over time. And I see someone else said score, right? Your credit score is almost certainly going to go up over time as you pay off your bills super fast. The last thing that would go up is something most people actually never think about. Would you get more credit offers if you started paying off your bills super fast? Of course you would. How many of you are getting credit offers right now? I think my dog's getting credit offers right now, right? We all get them. The question is, what are you doing with them, right? Because here's what I used to do with my credit offers. They would come in the mail, and I would take those offers and I would shred them into the tiniest pieces of confetti I possibly could. And I would throw those pieces into different garbage cans because I was afraid that someone might put that offer back together again. And I was so afraid of credit. Why was I so afraid of credit? Because that's what my parents taught me, right? My mother especially, I can picture her face. Credit is dangerous, right? You leave the credit cards for the rainy day, the emergency. And if you have cash to pay for something, you pay cash. And you leave that credit card in the nightstand for an absolutely rainy day where you have no alternative, because that's how dangerous credit is. I was kind of raised that way, right? Unfortunately, although I know she meant well and she loves me, that advice comes from a lack of knowledge about how credit actually works. Now, what if I told you that my friend Nate, who is another Renata student, he posted on Facebook a few years ago a picture of himself. It was a selfie, and he's holding up about 14 or 15 credit cards that I could count in the picture. He's fanning out about 15 cards with a big cheesy smile on his face. Think about this. If one of your loved ones went on Facebook and posted a picture with about 15 credit cards, what would you advise that person? What kind of comments do you think Nate got on that post when he's holding up 15 different credit cards? Now, I can tell you because I screenshot it because I knew the storm was coming, right? The comments were this: are you crazy? That's reckless. It's irresponsible. You know, you have 4 young kids, and now he's got 5, right? At the time, he only had 4 boys. Now he's got 5 boys. but you have 4 young kids, a young wife, and you're all going to be living under a bridge. Like, that is so reckless to have that many cards. But again, it's a lack of knowledge about how credit works. And I know Nate is not as educated. So what if I told you that all 15 of those credit cards, and today he's got, well, the last I spoke to him, it was about 30. I actually saw Nate in Panama in late 2019 before we got locked down, because we went on a business trip. Because once you learn how taxes work, you don't take vacations anymore, right? You take business trips so you can write it off. So we were on the Panama Canal, and he says, oh, I've got about 30 of those cards now. But what if I told you that all of those cards were 0% interest for 12, 18, 24, 36 months? And it only takes Nate 3 to 6 months to do the average fix and flip on an investment property. So what does that mean for Nate? That means that Nate is buying properties on a 0% interest credit card, probably using the same credit card to buy the materials to fix up that house. And he sells it after about 6 months. He pays off the principal on the card. He never paid any interest anywhere in the transaction. And even better, he probably didn't use any traditional banks at all. He doesn't need them. He doesn't need this type of financing. He doesn't need partners of any sort, which can be a headache in a whole lot of different ways if you don't know what you're doing. And Renatus has classes on that as well, but he doesn't need them, right? And what if, let's say one of his cards is approaching the 18-month mark and they're about to start charging interest. Does Nate have the leverage to call that bank and say, hey, I have 29 other cards just like yours. You either leave me at 0% interest, or I'm going to park your card in the nightstand and use one of your 29 competitors. Is that a thing? Have you ever even thought about doing things like that? If you understand how the banks work and how credit works, you could, right? Now get knowledgeable and start getting rich off of credit. If you're not getting rich off of credit, again, I'm not saying it's any fault of your own, but it's probably just a lack of knowledge about how it actually works, because you could be getting rich off of credit. I have another friend, Bob, out of Chicago, who tells a story that when he found Renatus, his personal credit score was really bad. And again, he tells a story, so I'm not spilling the beans on him, but he'll tell you his score was about 415, 420, super low. And he jokes that you have to work really hard to get your credit score that low. But in the meantime, he started building business credit, which today stands at somewhere between $1 and $2 million. How did he do that if his personal score was so low? Well, he took some of our business credit and business funding classes and learned how to build business credit and not have it tied to his personal information whatsoever, or his personal scores and profiles. In the meantime, he started repairing his credit with some resources that Renatus, has, but he didn't let a bad credit score stop him from getting rich. If you had $1 to $2 million in business lines of credit, could you create some wealth? Could you buy some investment properties and do some different things? Of course you could, right? Again, what you don't know about credit is probably hurting you. It really is. So getting back to this, we're going to get more credit offers. And I'm not saying all credit offers are good. You need to learn how it works and learn how to judge what's good or what's not good. But how are you even getting more credit offers? If you just paid off your Visa so fast, why are you now getting credit offers from Discover and American Express and all these different banks? How do they even know that you just paid off your Visa so quickly? Well, they bought your information from the credit reporting agencies, right? The big three, let's say. But what I learned was those credit reporting agencies are really nothing more than data collection centers. And they make money by selling off data. And I intentionally didn't say accurate data, because statistically, 8 out of 10 credit profiles have at least one major mistake in it in the country, right? So think about that, 8 out of 10. And I can tell you that our credit instructor, who is very well known in the credit industry in this country, very well known, he says in his entire career, he has never, not one time, seen a credit profile that didn't have at least one mistake in it. So he's yet to come across one that didn't have a mistake. Chances are your profile has a mistake in it right now. right? Keep that in mind. So these things would go up. What would go down? I mentioned the interest rates, right? Remember I said Nate is paying 0% interest? Bob, who has the business credit, he's paying about 3 to 9% interest. Not quite zero, but still single digit interest rates when the average American is paying double digit, right? What you don't know is hurting you. So your APRs, your interest rates would go down. Question for the room, getting back to this scenario here. I just paid off this debt in 6 months' time. In month number 7, which would be May, do I continue to send my whole income to this credit card if I don't owe the credit card any money? I have a zero balance. Do I continue to send them my paychecks? You probably could. Maybe in the first month you get a bit of a credit, but by month 2 or 3, you might get an email, a phone call, or something. Now, what is that bank going to say to you? Are they going to say, hey, we don't know if you knew this, but you don't owe us anything. Please stop sending us money. Is that what the bank's going to say? No. I mean, a bank would never say that, right? They'll never tell you to stop sending them money. But what they might say is this. Hey, we noticed that you keep sending us money, even though you don't owe us anything. Why don't you charge something against that card so we can apply the money you keep sending us? That's more likely what they're going to say, right? So we actually have to create more debt in order to continue using this strategy. You heard me right. We have to create more debt. And now that's something that most people are deathly afraid of. I know I was, because again, my parents taught me that debt was bad. Avoid it at all costs, right? Isn't that what Susie Orman and these people and Dave Ramsey are saying? Avoid debt. Listen, those people are great, right? They're great if you are in a financial hole, because obviously if you're in a hole, stop digging. Now they're great at getting you back to ground zero, but that's not why we're here. We're here in the line because all of you said you wanted to be wealthy, which means you don't want to just break even. You don't want to just survive. You want to excel. You want to be better. And for that, those people are not the greatest, right? It says Renatus will give you information on how to actually grow and create wealth. Pretty awesome stuff. So what we're going to do is actually start using this credit card to start paying off that mortgage super fast. Now, before I get into that, I want to show you something. You remember in the beginning, way in the beginning, when I said that we're going to stop saving money? That might have scared some of you, right? You may have gasped a little bit. My grandmother was 95 years old. If she heard me telling you to stop saving money, she'd whack me over the head right now, right? Because that old school mentality, you need to save money. But we eliminated it, but I did not take away your emergency fund. I hid it from you, but I made it 10 times better than what it was. Because here it is right here. Do you see in your line of credit where you started out with a $15,000 limit and you owed $12,000 to begin with, right? There was a spread there between what you owe and what you have available. There's a $3,000 spread between those two numbers. And a better marker there. That $3,000 spread is your emergency fund. In case something happens, there's an automatic $3,000 built into your line of credit. Now, $3,000 is way more than the average person has in a savings account at any given time. The great thing about having it here is, guess what? That $3,000 actually increases by $2,000 every single month that goes by. What were the chances that you were saving $2,000 a month the old way in a savings account? Not very likely. The average American has zero money left over at the end of the month, right? Here it's built into your line of credit. And guess what? As you start paying down your bills faster and your limits increase, so does your spread. Your emergency fund actually increases. And there's way more flexibility in here than trying to stash money in a savings account and having one emergency just wipe you out. Right? Think about that. There's a lot more detail we could get into as far as how to use it as your emergency fund, but that alone is awesome, right? So, okay, let's start using this to pay off this mortgage. We started out with a $200,000 mortgage here. on day one of using this strategy to pay off your mortgage, you will go down to the bank and you will drop a $12,000 principal only payment against that mortgage. It is vital that you let them know this is a principal only payment. Because if you just slap $12,000 down, what did we say? About 3/4 of it is going to go towards interest. You don't want that. Hey, bank teller, this is principal only payment. That means at the end of the first day, you have now dropped your principal owed on this house to $188. You dropped the principal by 12 grand on the first day of using this strategy against your mortgage. The old way that we're all paying our mortgages, how long did it take us to drop the principal by 12 grand? 4 years. Here, I just saved you 4 years of payments in just my first payment here. 4 years I saved you. Is that a big deal? It's a very big deal. Because guess what? How much interest did you pay over that first 4-year span over there? Almost $46,000. How much interest did you pay here? You haven't paid any interest yet because it's just day one. But what happened? You charged that 12 grand back on the card. Now, did your budget change at all? No, you still have 5,000 coming in and 3,000 going out. So that means that the new 12 grand you just charged will take you another 6 months to get back down to zero. And when it does get back down to zero, you will go down to the bank. It'll be 6 months later, and you will drop another $12,000 principal only payment, which means now the balance you owe is only $176. And you have dropped the principal that you own this house by $24,000 in the first 6 months. In 6 months' time. Now, the old way, how long would it take you to drop your principal by 24,000? 12,000 was 4 years. So 24,000 would be 8 years, almost a decade of your life. And guess what? You'd have to double that number too. Over $90,000 you would have paid in interest, and it would have taken you 8 years. Here, you did it in just 6 months' time. How much interest did you pay? How much interest did we say we're paying for every 6 month span that goes by? About $780. Less than $1,000 in interest to do what I just showed you right there. And I saved you almost a decade of payments. You see why this is a no-brainer here? Now, I have a question for everyone in the room. I want to make sure that you're still following along. During this 6 month time span, between these two chunk payments here of 12 grand, during that 6 month span, did my regular $1,200 mortgage payment continue to get paid? What do you think? Yes or no? Just somebody type into the chat box. What do you think? Am I still making my regular monthly payment? Nobody? Lamont, what do you think? The answer, you say no, someone says yes, in addition to the 12,000. Well, the correct answer is actually yes. Now, Lamont, you said no. Let me show you where the payment is being made. We said we have $3,000 going out the door every month here. Our $1,200 mortgage payment is just a part of the 3 grand. Right? We have $1,200 for the mortgage, $600 for the car notes, and $1,200 for the living expenses. That's our $3,000 of expenses that we have every single month. So this actually becomes a combination of continuing to make our monthly payments. The difference is, as our credit card balance hits zero every 6 months, we are going to go to the bank and drop an additional principal only payment of $12,000. Right? So it's the combination of those two things. And that combination is super powerful. If you continue to do that, and admittedly, it takes discipline, right? But let me tell you something. I paid off my own vehicle in less than a year, as opposed to the 5 years it was supposed to take. And once you start doing this and see how fast you're paying down your bills, it will be like a game to you. It will be fun. So it's not hard to stay disciplined as far as I'm concerned. But if you do that, It will not take you 30 years to pay off this mortgage. You will have this mortgage paid off free and clear in somewhere between 5 to 8 years flat. 5 to 8 years. You see that? Now, remember what I said, that most people try to pay off their mortgages faster by sending the bank extra money, and all they're really shaving off is 4, 5, 6 years. It's still up over the 20-year mark. You didn't beat the bank at their own game. You just sent them extra money. You sacrificed somewhere else for it. Here, I didn't change your budget whatsoever. You have the same money coming in. You actually have more available every month, but now you beat the bank at their own game. You're down below the 8-year mark, right? But 5 to 8 years, that's kind of a big window. It's a big time frame. How come I can't be more specific? Well, the reason is actually this. I don't know, as you pay down your bills faster, I don't know what your credit profile looks like right now. So I can't tell you how much your limit would go up, right? Again, we're using average numbers here. But let's just say that your limit went up over time and it became $25,000. So you went from 15 to a $25,000 limit. Could you increase this chunk payment from 12,000 to 18,000 every 6 months? Which means you're paying off your house that much faster, right? So if your chunk payment becomes 18,000, your new limit is 25, guess what else happened? Your emergency fund just grew from $3,000 to $7,000. Your emergency fund just more than doubled. And you still have an extra $2,000 available each month that goes by. And even when you charge at 18, you start out with a $7,000 emergency fund. I'm telling you, it is so awesome. And the more you use it, the more your limit goes up, the higher your payments, the bigger your emergency fund. It gives you way more security than trying to stash pennies in this old school savings account. Just not very efficient, right? So let's just say, and I'm going to speed this up. I think we're going to go over a few minutes if you'll allow that, because we started about 15 minutes late or something like that. So if you'll bear with me, if you have to go, that's cool. I usually finish up right at 9. But let's say we've paid off our house in, let's just call it 5 years, right? That means that you no longer have to make this $1,200 mortgage payment. Now my house is paid off quickly. Somebody said, is the credit card used to pay the regular car note as well? I did. I used it for that. Now I can tell you this. If you go down to the bank and you slap a credit card down and say, hey, I want to make a car payment or a mortgage payment, most banks will say, oh no, you can't make a mortgage payment on a credit card or a car payment on a credit card, because most banks will not allow you to pay for one debt with another debt instrument, like a credit card. However, let me be very, very clear. Do wealthy folks know their way around the financial system? Do you think that there are wealthy people in this country right now that know how to get around that? Totally legally, right? I can tell you absolutely. And that's why you really need to take the class, because the class will show you what questions to ask the bank as you start your velocity banking. They'll teach you how to figure out what's the best velocity banking card or tool for you. It's such a personalized strategy. But I definitely had no problem slapping down my card at my bank to pay off my car in less than a year. So, but keep in mind, I need to learn how to do that. And to be honest, I needed to explain it to the bank what I was doing, because I knew more than them at that point. It's pretty cool. I'm going to talk about that too. So we paid off the house in 5 years. I have $1,200 that I don't have to pay anymore. Now I'm at $3,200 available every single month, right? I eliminated the mortgage payment, the savings, and the credit card payment. So I have $3,200 sitting around at the end of every month. With an extra $3,000 a month just sitting around, can you start attacking the car notes pretty quickly? Yes, you can. With an extra $3,000 a month, that $13,000 that the average household carries, that'll be paid off in about 4 months, right? 3 or 4 months, it's gone, wiped out. So 4 months goes by, guess what? You no longer have to make car payments anymore. and you recoup another $600. So now you sit at $3,800 a month left over from your monthly paychecks. Every single month, that money is just sitting there. Now, remember I said I'm not going to touch the $1,200 of living expenses because most people haven't taken Renata's classes and don't know how to write that stuff off and get that money back. So I will leave that there. But you have almost $4,000, almost 80% of your income just sitting around now every month, every single month. Pretty cool. So now that you have your house paid off, could you go back to the bank, maybe the same bank where you got your first mortgage, and say, hey, I just want to let you know that I just paid off my mortgage in 5 years, and I'm actually here to purchase more real estate. What's their reaction going to be? The first reaction will be incredulous because who pays off their house in 5 years? The second reaction will be red carpet treatment, right? Oh, you want more real estate? Sit down, we'll bring you some coffee. The manager comes out, shakes your hand and rubs your feet. I don't know, all that good stuff, right? They're going to treat you well because they want your business. And because they are trained to do so, and it's the only thing they're trained to do, they're going to bring you paperwork for another 30-year amortized loan. That's all the employer taught them how to do, right? And you, now being, let's say, we're not as educated, you will tell them, no, I'm no longer interested in that product. Today, because I own my home outright, today I'm interested in a I just said that market didn't work. I'm interested in a home equity line of credit. Notice I said line, not loan, right? Now, don't get me wrong. Loans have their place. Loans are very expensive. But if you had someone else paying your loans, would that work for you? Well, it might, but instead of loans, let's get this line of credit on our house and we can use them to pick up rental properties. Remember I said we'll be leveraging other people going to work to pay our bills? Let's get some rental properties. I can tell you that when I talked about going down to the bank and me knowing more than the bankers, that's the truth. Because actually in February of last year, I did a live presentation and it was about a month before we got locked down. And this lady came to me when I was done and she loved the presentation. She learned a lot. And she says, I'm an executive at SunTrust Bank. And I used to be an executive at Bank of America. She was funny because she says, I'm not a bank teller. I'm not even a branch manager. I'm a big shot. I'm an executive. I'm up in the high floors of those downtown buildings you were talking about. Nobody ever taught her how to pay her own bills this way. She had no idea. And that's the bank executive. Think about this. Why does that matter to you? Well, when you go down to the bank or your financial planner or whoever, if they don't know how to do this, what makes you think you're getting the best advice out there? If your financial planners and bankers don't even know how to do this? And why would Bank of America or SunTrust teach their employees how to do this if it's going to cost them profit? So when you go down to the bank, they write up 30-year paperwork, amortized loans, because that makes them the most money. Financial planners, for the most part, will push products that they are either licensed to sell or that make them the most money. They're not going to tell you about real estate because they don't make money from that if you invest in real estate, right? Keep that in mind. But you own your home outright. It's been 5 to 8 years, whatever it is. Now you're taking a heat line, right? A line of credit on your house. Let's say you get $200,000. It appreciated to 230, 250. You get a $200,000 line. What are you going to do with it? Well, I might suggest that you put $10,000, $20,000 down payments on rental properties, right? Because real estate is the only investment tool that I'm aware of that you don't have to pay full price up front. Think about that. Even if you don't know any creative ways of getting real estate, even in the retail market, you don't have to pay 100% of the house up front. You put 1, 2, 3, 10%, and you get a line or a loan, whatever it is, you get the house. Is that the case for stocks? Right? And again, I'm not saying stocks are right or wrong, but I don't play in the stock market mostly because I can't control it, right? And to my knowledge, you pay full price per share, you hope and pray it goes up, then you sell it and you have no more stock. You might get a little bit of a dividend, usually not enough to live off of. What about gold or silver, which they say is safer? You still pay full price per ounce, you hope and pray it goes up, and then you sell it and you have no more gold or silver. Also, can you take your gold, scrape it down a little bit, and take your gold shavings to the supermarket this weekend to pay for your groceries? No, the gold just sits there somewhere until you sell it and you have no more gold. However, if you picked up rental properties, do these rental properties spit out cash flow, which could fund your lifestyle, which might make your car payment or pay for your vacation or whatever it is? Sure, of course. And by the way, the more properties you have, the bigger the tax breaks you get. It's crazy what you get here. So on the average property that has a mortgage on it, you're looking at about $400 of profit per house after all expenses are paid, right? So yeah, you like the way I'm painting the pictures. I'm glad, Adrian, you said that, because sometimes I think I'm a little too wordy, but I just enjoy this so much, right? That's why I volunteered to do this. So we have these 10 houses. They're each spitting out about $400 of extra cash flow every month. So that means times 10 houses, that's an extra $4,000 you have coming in as extra income. And you still have almost $4,000 available from your job. So you went from zero cash flow at the end of every month to almost $8,000 now sitting available every single month. So not only did you pay down your bills faster, you didn't have to sacrifice in your life in any way. You just used your money in a more efficient way, and you actually increased your available income. Now, if you have almost 8 grand coming in and technically only 1,200 going out, those are your expenses. If you did this correctly, your tenants should be covering your expenses up there. So you have 8 grand coming in, only 1,200 going out. So if you have more coming in and less going out, could you use the same strategy to start paying off your rental properties faster? Sure, right? And with more money coming in and less going out, it might not take you 6 months to pay off 12 grand. It might only take you 2 or 3 months, right? There was actually a couple, a young newlywed couple, Renata students, they posted a few years ago that they currently own, thanks to Renata's education, 8 or 9 properties. They were newlyweds at about 24, 25. And on Facebook, they posted that they would have all 8 or 9 properties paid off in full by the time they were 30 years old, right? I don't know how old all of you are on the line, but I'm 45. If I would have had this in my mid-20s, things would have been a lot different, right? A lot different. But luckily, my kids now have an advantage that I didn't have at that age. But think about that. What would that mean for you? So as you start attacking your rental properties using the same strategy that you paid off your own house with, you're going to pay these off faster. Now, in a house that doesn't have a mortgage on it, right, it's paid off, there's an average of about $1,000 per house in profit, which means now you're at $10,000 a month coming in off of these 10 properties, and still about 4 grand from your job. You're at $14,000 a month now. I don't know about you, but at this point, I'm quitting that job. You can keep it, right? Over 50% of Americans hate their jobs. I just saw that quote, so I just heard it again on the radio. Over 50%, 55%, something like that. People dislike or actually hate their jobs. They're going there just for a paycheck. So most people are like me. And if they could quit their job, they would. And that's why I quit in December 2019. I was just fed up. So $14,000 a month coming in. Now, I'm going to wrap up here, but that $10,000 a month is actually a magic number. That number is the amount that the average American says they would be comfortable in retiring with. So if I had $10,000 a month, I could retire. I feel pretty safe, right? That would cover my expenses. I could travel a little bit. It'll be good. But here's the challenge. Most people are trying to get $10,000 a month in retirement by saving money over their lifetime. Whether, again, the long-term savings, 401ks at your job, or short-term savings, just stashing money under the mattress over your lifetime. They want $10,000 a month. But if we think of retirement as age 65, and we hope to live maybe 20 years in retirement, we hope to reach 85, right? At $10,000 a month for 20 years, your nest egg that you create over your lifetime would have to be $3.4 million. How you guys doing on that? Is there anyone on the line that's 3.1 million, 3.2? Like you're close? Anywhere close? I'm here to tell you that is nearly mathematically impossible for you to save that much money over your lifetime. That might sting a little bit, but hear me out. If the average working life is age 20 to 65, that's 45 working years. If the average income is $60,000 a year times 45 working years, that equals $2.7 million. So you'll never hit 3.4. And that's if you save every penny you ever earn in your entire life, you would only get to 2.7. You can't do it. You can't do it. Now, maybe you did it some weird way. Maybe you hit the Powerball this weekend, and I hope you do, right? You're at 3.4 million. Sweet. You are all set for 20 years of retirement. But what if you live 20 years in a day? What's happening the day after your 85th birthday? Where's your nest egg? You chipped away at it for 20 years. It's all used up. Now you don't know where your next dollar or meal is coming from. That's scary at that age, right? What about, is there any money to leave to the next generations? Kids, grandkids, nieces, nephews, favorite charity or religious organization? The money's all gone. It's all gone. Now, did I just not show you how to create the same $10,000 a month that the average American says they want in retirement? And guess what? It is not retirement. It is not age-based. This does not care if I'm 65 or 25. It just doesn't, right? I told you I'm 45. I retired going on 2 years now. It doesn't care how old you are. And guess what else? I didn't have to save a penny anywhere in my life. Nowhere on this whiteboard did I save a single penny. Wealthy folks don't save the bulk of their money. They create and control their own cash flow. They pay down their debts very quickly, right? When big corporations buy each other out, they don't pay on that for 30, 50 years. They pay the debt off very quickly using this strategy, pay off the debt, then start creating and controlling their own cash flow. This is not dependent on how many hours I have in a day to go to work or to work a second job or how much energy I have before I collapse. Other people are going to work to pay me first, right? These tenants know that their rent needs to be paid first thing because they don't want to be out in the street either. And not that we're taking advantage of them. They need someplace safe and secure to live. We're providing that for them, right? But you're creating the cash flow that most people want. And it doesn't matter how long you live either. I could live to be 150 years old. That money will still be coming in. It'll probably increase over time because when is the last time you heard of rents going down? Not very common, right? And then when I finally pass away at age 150, can I will those properties to my kids, grandkids, nieces, nephews, favorite charity, religious organization? Absolutely. Absolutely, I can. And the knowledge of how to do all that stuff is actually provided by Renatus. My whole outlook on life has changed thanks to what I learned here. It can change for you if you get started, right? Any final questions? I'm sorry, we're about quarter after. If you have any final questions, type them into the chat box. I'll let you know that there's actually an advanced velocity banking class that's taught by a gentleman named Tony Scotti. He tells a quick story during the class that at one point he had 75 properties paying him rent. That's pretty cool, right? 75. I think today he's up over 93 and about 70, 80% of them are paid off in full already. But he told a story that he got to the point where he started paying off his rental properties at a rate of almost one per month. He hit a cycle because think about this. Do you see how we used our one house to get 10 houses, right? As you start paying them off, right? You use your house to pay off that first one. Once you pay that one off quickly, then use these 2 to pay off the 3rd one and these 3 to pay off the 4th one, and so on and so forth. And each house gets paid off faster than the one before it, right? It's crazy. And you can use your house to get 10, that becomes 10 houses, that becomes 10 houses, that becomes 10 houses, and your 10 houses could become 100 houses, right? You see how we turned our one house into about 200,000 in a line of credit? That means that could become 200K, that could become 200K times 10 houses, that's $2 million right there. Remember my friend Bob, who has 1 to 2 million in business credit? A lot of it was done like that through his properties. And we turned our one house into $10,000 a month coming in. That means that could become 10,000, that becomes 10,000, that becomes 10,000. And your 100 houses could become 100,000 a month. You see that? Now, let me be very, very clear before you guys go. I am not saying that everyone in Renatus is bringing in $100,000 a month. But this is the only place that I found where there is a path to that. Because this is not magic. It's not some out of the world number that I just pulled out of a hat. This is just math, right? If that number is too big for you, maybe you only want 5,000 a month. Great, no problem. Just do half that much, right? Maybe you're ambitious. Maybe you want 50,000 a month. Great, no problem. Just do that times 5, right? It's just a process. It's like baking a cake. You just learn how to do it and you do it again and again and again, right? Thank you guys so much for your time. I really appreciate you. Thank you for the nice comments because I enjoy doing this. I love this stuff. So again, get started. Get back with the person who invited you. Get to an introduction presentation if you haven't. Learn about our community. Let me ask, Adrian, did somebody invite you here or are you part of the community already? I have to go through Debbie. It's actually, we're using her Zoom account and things like that. So I'm not sure about giving out the recording. However, I am here every week. So you will find me every Thursday, same place, same bat time, same bat channel. Bring your friends. You're part of the community. So get with Debbie Worthington and see if we can get the recording for it. Yeah, everyone on the line, I know you have people in your life that has bills that they need to learn how to pay off faster without sacrificing anything, right? And I don't care if they're not interested in real estate. Show them that you care about them and bring them over here next week and learn how to do this stuff. Learn how to do it. Get to a property tour, get to an introduction, learn about a community, right? My kids are part of the community at this point. They have education separate from mine because I wanted them to know about taxes. My kids at 15 and 16 at the time, they knew more about taxes and credit and banking than most middle-aged people in this country. Pretty awesome stuff. So again, thank you for your time. Thank you for staying over. I appreciate it. And I will see you guys next week. Or if you're not a part of the community, hopefully you will be soon. And I'll see one of your properties being toured online. All right, good deal. Thank you guys. Have a wonderful evening. Take care now.